Welcome to CXWise, where we share wisdom, insights, stories, and expertise from the world of customer experience. As always, I'm your host, Nathan Bennett, and you're about to hear real-world experiences and practical advice that will elevate your CX game no matter your title and no matter your industry. So, without further ado, let's get wise. My guest today is Lisha Perez. She is a partnership lead at the B2B Institute, a think tank funded by LinkedIn that provides cutting-edge research and insights to help B2B marketing leaders grow their businesses. With over a decade of experience in strategic marketing and general management, Lisha has a proven track record for delivering outsized revenue growth and building strong partnerships across B2B and B2C contexts. She is an excellent source of wisdom on all things B2B and a believer of cross-funnel marketing strategies that I can't wait to dig into. Welcome to CXWise, Lisha. How are you today, my friend?
I'm excellent. I'm so excited to be here with you today, Nate.
Well, I'm sorry that you're looking at a robo version of me. I wish I could have been in the studio with you today, but I couldn't get up to New York. So thank you for being there, and I can't wait to dive in. So, first question. There's a strong connection between brand building and customer experiences. And brands even use LinkedIn to improve CX as one of their bottom of the funnel goals. So why do you think this connection exists, and why is it more relevant in the age of AI?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So there's a very strong intrinsic connection between brand building and customer experience. And if we think about it, it really makes sense because a brand is an identity that distinguishes your business, your product, your service from all of your competitors. And it's established, defined, and reinforced across all of the touch points that a customer has with your business. I think very often in organizations, and I work with a lot of B2B advertisers, we think about brand as something that belongs in the marketing department, and we think about customer experience that belongs in customer success or belongs in another department. But if you think about your brand as the expectations, the identity, the associations that it's built across the entire customer journey, it becomes clear that brand building and customer experience are intrinsically linked, and it's really important to have harmony across all of the different exposures that a customer may have to your brand or to your business.
I absolutely love that idea of harmony across all touch points. That's great. And I think it's much harder to do, but hopefully because of the advances in the tools that we talk about a lot on this show, hopefully that harmony is becoming more and more consistent. I want to talk about measuring the impact of brand campaigns. Specifically, what are your tips of measuring the impacts of brand campaigns? And do you think that impacts of brand building can be measured through improved customer experience?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, before I jump into that, I want to get to I didn't address the second part of your previous question about the opportunity of AI and what that presents in terms of, we think about linking brand building to CX and creating a more holistic journey for customers. But AI is a tremendous opportunity to reinforce that consistency and to do that in a much more scalable way, cost-effective way, faster way, and in a way that actually allows you to bring your customer insights from those interactions back into your business more quickly. And be able to action that. So I think that this is a really exciting time for brand builders, for CX geeks, to be able to to really, it's a game changer. So that's really exciting. So getting into the question of brand measurement, right? Like, so how do we think about that? I think one of the things that I think has been across, I talk about the world of B2B advertising, has been this idea of the dimensionalizing the length of the buying cycle, right? So I work with advertisers who are in, very often we talk about B2B SaaS or highly complex technical categories. And, those buyer journeys are sometimes years long, right? So you're talking about very high consideration categories, very complex categories. Those decisions tend to be made in a group process. So, how do we measure the impact of brand, right? We're thinking about that type of time horizon. And we talk about one of the things that's has been a very popular idea that we've helped to evangelize at the B2B Institute is the 95-5 rule, which is built from this idea that if you work in a category, I'm making it up, call it maybe B2B CRM, and you have a 5-year buying cycle, if you dimensionalize what that looks like, that means only 5% of your potential category buyers are in market at any given quarter, right? So how do you think about the role and the impact that your brand building will have both in quarter and then over the course of 1 to 2 buying cycles? That's been really important to help marketers think about what they reap in the short term, right? So how do you measure the impact that you have in quarter, and what's the role of your advertising in quarter, as well as long term, harvesting those future cash flows from prospective customers, 2, 3, 4 quarters out for the duration of the buying cycle. So I think that from a measurement perspective, it's really important for businesses to take both a short-term view and a long-term view to look at, the performance or the kind of the total funnel performance of their campaigns to ensure that they're priming buyers longer term, as well as trying to capture those buyers who are in market today. Because one insight that has been, I think, very much an eye-opener is that in B2B buying, in B2B categories, on average, between 80% and 90% of buyers will only, RFP from a brand that they've previously heard of. And on average, there's about 3 brands on that short list. So if you're not thinking kind of long-term or trying to prime those buyers before they're in market and reach them, then you've missed your opportunity because, 9 in 10 will only choose a brand from that short list. If you're not speaking to them ahead of time, if you're not on that short list, it becomes a lot harder to close that business. So thinking short term, thinking long term becomes really essential. At the B2B Institute, we have a tremendous amount of tools, resources, mental models to help marketers. I would say, B2B marketers are our focus, but I think, even if you work in, direct-to-consumer type categories, there's a lot of insight to be gleaned as well.
Speaking of getting on that short list, obviously a really, really important place to be, but you've got to stick out from the crowd in order to get on that list, right? So I'm wondering what the role of creativity is in making your brand distinctive, and then more broadly, like enhancing customer experiences. And how do you think about it both for the LinkedIn platform and off of LinkedIn?
Yeah, so if you think about, okay, we invest in advertising, we deploy advertising, and we hope that it will persuade a customer to choose our product or service over our competition. Your ads need to be able to do, I'll say 3 things. It needs to capture attention, meaning it needs to be noticed. So, on the LinkedIn platform, we think of that as, is that thumb-stopping content, knowing that most members on the platform are consuming or viewing content on mobile. So does it capture attention? Then secondly, so this gets to this idea of distinctive brand assets, is it attributable to your brand, right? in the instant that a potential customer is assessing an ad. And we live in a world that we are constantly receiving messages from advertisers, news media, in my case, WhatsApp groups from, my son's preschool, constantly getting messages that, I need to be able to register. It's captured my attention. What is it? Has it built-in association? So is it attributable to your brand? That's the second thing. And then because we're talking about marketing and advertising and persuading someone to purchase, does it link to a relevant buying situation, right? So sometimes it's easier to think about this in terms of consumer categories that we touch or that touch us all, every day. Snickers has a very long running campaign that says, "Hungry, why wait?" Because that is a very prevalent buying situation for a candy bar. You're hungry, you want to eat something, you're going to run into a convenience store and buy a Snickers bar. So, does it capture attention? Does it link to, is it attributable to your brand? And does it link to a specific buying situation? And then I think, because I'm talking to you, this is Sprinklr CXYs. We think about AI and the opportunity that it creates to help businesses get their arms around buying situations and what that looks like from a, what does the customer feel? Who are they buying with? When does it happen? What are categories that are where they co-purchase? And ingesting that information from customer interactions, that becomes, I think there's a tremendous opportunity there. So, we talk about attention, branding, linkage, and then does all of that come together to build equity? So positive sentiment for your business through the exposure to the ad. So we often think about creativity as being very subjective, or do I like the ad? How does it make me feel? But an ad has to achieve all of these things to be effective. So it's very systematic. We call this at the B2B Institute the ABLE framework. So, if you have ABLE branding, it's attention grabbing, it drives brand association, it links to buying situations, it builds equity. So creativity is so important. And there's research that shows that creativity can be, can multiply, it can be a sales multiplier, between 10 and 20x. Great ads outperform mediocre ads by that type of scale. And one of the biggest drivers of this, because, sometimes we see ads that are great on attention, but fall short on these other attributes, is being distinctive.
So one of the problems that B2B businesses, I think, especially face on LinkedIn in particular, is that sometimes the majority of their followers of that page, of that business, are oftentimes people who either already work for that business or people who would like to work for that business, not necessarily a potential customer or potential client. How does a brand get over that hurdle and that challenge?
The most certain way to do that is to drive reach, right? And that almost always involves some type of paid media, because you want to your point, expand the audience of people who are exposed to your advertising beyond those who are already invested in your business. They've chosen to follow you because they either, they work for the company, or maybe they're a current customer and they like your business enough that they want to follow your handle, or maybe they're a potential partner or supplier or vendor or what have you. Really to grow, there's one law of marketing that every academic that we work with agrees with, and that is that excess share of voice or reach above and beyond your market share drives growth over time. So, if I break it down, driving reach and punching above your weight in media drives penetration gains, which then drives market share growth and revenue. So I think that there's, I think particularly in B2B categories, because they're so technical, because the potential buyer groups are smaller than in, a lot of consumer categories, there is often I think an underinvestment in reach-based marketing and advertising. But what I tell customers in this instance, it's not that you have to reach the whole world but make sure that you're reaching as many potential category buyers as possible. However niche or small that may be, small or big that might be. So that's really important. I think if you work on a business where, paid media is not really an option, or maybe there aren't very deep pockets, there are ways that you can kind of work within, organic best practices to expand the reach of your organic content. But the most effective way is going to be investing in paid media.
Oh, I mean, that's sort of the yeah, of course it is. And man, I wish there was a better way, but no, we've got to spend money. We have to have budget for it. So yeah, I totally get it. When we talk about that short list again, it strikes me that those brands probably have already established a measure of trust for their potential customers. How have you seen brands, or how can brands leverage AI to build trust and loyalty and foster that long-term customer relationship, especially on a platform like LinkedIn?
I mean, I think we're just beginning to see the different applications that where AI can be used effectively to enhance trust, to establish a connection with customers, and reinforce associations that are developed across kind of like the full mix of advertising from a business. I think that with AI, we think about perhaps agentic AI, right? There's an opportunity to kind of create that better one-to-one connection. And there's a whole, I think, it's kind of the sky is the limit from like a customer success standpoint. I think also when we think about high consideration, so that's customer success, so that's like post-purchase. But then if I also think about pre-purchase and high consideration categories, and we think about a customer who has, very rightly, according to the B2B Institute playbook, been primed through upper funnel advertising and is now in the process, like of a buying motion, establishing a short list, and thinking about, how now I have my short list of 3 brands, how do I evaluate them? There's a very strong application or potential application for AI to help in that kind of middle part of the journey, right? And I'm really excited to see, how businesses start to deploy this technology to lead to better experiences for customers throughout that path to purchase.
A little while ago, you spoke at a panel on forget the CRO, the CMO's best friend is the CFO, which I love. And I'm very curious about your insights in regard to marketing investments in AI, brand building, and customer experience. I've had a lot of guests on here who caution C-suite decision makers on going all in on AI just to do it. So I'm curious if you can kind of unpack your insights and your wisdom about how the CMOs and CFOs can have a shared language and really understand what that relationship, how that relationship can be bolstered.
Yeah. This is actually a topic that I get asked about a lot. Typically from the lens of, I am responsible for marketing, I'm responsible for advertising, and I need to persuade or convince my stakeholder, my my budget holder, who is often the CFO, or more broadly the finance department, to sign on, to agree to the investment that I'm proposing. And one thing that I always kind of go back to is, for us as marketers and advertisers, our work is in service of the customer, right? And if we think about the customer as the ultimate kind of stakeholder, right? Who with their dollars shows us whether we are satisfying their needs or not. It really comes down to how our advertising, how our marketing is helping to drive revenue, right? And there are only 3 ways to drive revenue. And it becomes very intuitive when you think about what you're trying to achieve with the customer. You can grow revenue by getting more customers, so increasing your customer acquisition rate. So that points you into a direction of, here's an advertising or marketing campaign that is going to expand my customer base. And if you kind of look at it through that lens, then the marketing tactics, the media metrics, and also the financial outputs start to kind of fall into place, right? So grow your customer base. You can try and increase your current customer's buy rate. That's the second way. So get your current customer base to buy more. That is through upselling strategies or retention strategies, enhancing the customer lifetime value of your current relationships. That points, if we think about that as a North Star, that leads to a different set of marketing tactics and subsequent financial outputs or metrics that you would want. And then finally, this is the white space of advertising that, I think there's so much opportunity here for marketers to kind of put their stake in the ground to talk about what they do in this space, but it's through pricing, right? Stronger brands have more pricing power. So if you can build a story about, if you can, build a campaign that's around the objective of building pricing power with supporting metrics, supporting measurement, that's a really powerful story. But I think it comes down to what are you trying to achieve from like a customer perspective? Like are you trying to get more customers? Are you trying to get them to buy more? Or are you trying to get them to pay for a higher, or are you trying to increase their willingness to pay? Right. And then from that, it's like, okay, now we have the connection to revenue, and it becomes much easier to have a conversation about this is what I need to get there, and here's my objective, and here's how we're going to hold each other accountable or hold ourselves accountable to that ultimate goal of getting our customers to demonstrate how much they value us through increased revenue.
Lisha, I know you're a big advocate of cross-funnel marketing. Can you share 3 actionable steps that marketers in our audience should consider when expanding cross-funnel marketing on a channel like LinkedIn?
Yeah. 3 steps. The first one is make sure you are reaching as many potential category buyers as your budget will allow. And that is important from several, from the perspective of several things. One, going back to the comment I made or about getting on the short list, and the only brands that are on the short list are brands that have previously are currently known to the buyer, to the buying group. That's super important. And then secondly, exposure, and we see this on platform all the time, exposure to brand awareness advertising, to upper funnel advertising, drives lifts and lower funnel outcomes. It's a multiplier. So the more that you invest in brand awareness, the more opportunity you have for that lift. The second point related to that is ensure that that you have overlap across your audiences. We did. There was an article in Marketing Week last year that two of my colleagues had written that demonstrated that the average overlap between brand and lower funnel audiences on platform at LinkedIn across over 1,000 companies was 5% on average. So that's a missed opportunity. And then third, I think just ensure that all the essentials of making effective creative on platform are covered. So going back to that framework of, does it capture attention? Is it attributable to my brand? You'd be surprised how many times me as a member of LinkedIn on the platform, I get exposed to an ad where the logo is minuscule on my iPhone screen. That's a missed opportunity. And that, and taking the time to view that, or view that ad on mobile before you approve it is something that's free to do. But based on the number of ads that I get served, where the proportions of the copy, the proportions of the logo are not optimized for mobile, this is a hypothesis, but I would venture to guess that there's a lot more room for businesses to be doing that. So make sure that you are planning to have sufficient reach of category buyers is one. Ensure that across your cross-funnel marketing that you have sufficient audience overlap is two. And three, get the fundamentals of building an effective, compelling ad right. And to the point about cost, I think I think one thing. So when I worked client side, right, and I had P&L responsibility, and but I would have to go and make an ask every year for my marketing budget. Being able to demonstrate, this is how my owner's mindset. Here's how I'm cutting back on certain things to be able to fund media, which is, for those of us who work in marketing and advertising, we call those the working dollars. Those are the dollars that actually get you in front of customers, and trying to drive efficiency elsewhere becomes really important. So going back to AI, right? AI is an opportunity to make more cost-effective creative. That's an opportunity for budgeters to be scrappy, and to demonstrate that cost-effectiveness mindset. An ad doesn't need to have high production value to be effective. Is the last point.
We're really, really seeing your last point come to bear in all the kind of DIY, really, really effective advertising that shows up on platforms like TikTok. It's some of the most compelling ads I've seen have been from brands who understand that platform, understand their audience, and those things can be done on the cheap. Like, it doesn't have to be super high production value, to your point. Do you think that kind of format, this sort of TikTokification of platforms, will eventually show up on LinkedIn?
Well, I will say that video and creators is a tremendous focus of the platform. If you're a member of the platform and you're actively using it, I'm sure you will have noticed that there's a greater emphasis on video in feed. Um, and yes, I think that across platforms, there is a very strong appetite for snackable, short, compelling video content. As people have become more, become used to being exposed to that type of content across other platforms. So I think you will see that become clearer on LinkedIn.
So we'll wrap up, and I won't want to take up much more of your time, but your breadth of knowledge about marketing and advertising is so impressive and extensive. And I'm just wondering, what was the sort of origin? What made you fall in love with the marketing process, with the ins and outs of advertising? What were those like sort of sparks of like, oh man, I love this, and I want to do this with my life and with my career path? Where did that come from for you?
Well, I've always been fascinated by what motivates people to make decisions, and how a person's decisions or perception or viewpoints can be influenced through language, through media, through art. So that kind of brought me to the world of marketing and advertising. Before joining LinkedIn, I worked in consumer categories. So we think about, how do advertisers make, cause someone to change or go off rote, right? Or make a different decision. In a category, like, for example, my first job at a business school was in mayonnaise. And that is a decision that's made, a person buying mayonnaise, standing in the aisle in the supermarket makes that decision in 6 seconds. So you have 6 seconds to, that's the time horizon, right? It's something that's so rote for people. So how do you as a business owner, how do you as an advertiser, influence that decision, right? That 6 second, in that 6 second time horizon. And as I encountered this world of B2B, I found that it was almost the inverse of that, right? So we're talking about extremely high consideration categories, high complexity categories, decisions that are made not by one individual, but a group, and made over a very long time horizon. And you still have, are challenged by that time horizon because it's so infrequent compared to consumer categories. But then that presents a really interesting challenge for an advertiser to influence a prospective buyer to make a different sort of decision versus what they were doing before, right? So I've always been fascinated by what makes people tick, persuasion, influence, how that happens across media, and that's what brought me to the world of marketing and advertising.
Had I known that you had an extensive background in mayonnaise, I think we would have started there.
Oh my goodness,
it's almost lunchtime.
My first job, so I was involved in a lot of product testing. So, sometimes I would have to get up in the morning and at 7 a.m. be in a lab and do taste tests across different formulas or different recipes of mayonnaise on video conference with colleagues abroad. And that was a trip. That was as a first job at a business school. But you get really intimately
to be
knowledgeable.
a fly on the wall in those labs.
Yeah. But it's really about being very intimately knowledgeable about the product and the customer experience. In mayo, it's how does it taste on a cracker? But it's that type of centricity that I think, irrespective of the category, helps marketers and advertisers to be successful.
Well, I think the title of this episode is going to be Lessons on Marketing from the Mayonnaise, or something like that. Mayonnaise marketing. I don't know. We're going to work on that. We're going to workshop that. Lisha, Perez, thank you so much for making us all CX wiser. Thank you for your time. You've been very generous. And thank you for all of the wisdom, insights, stories, and expertise that you've brought to us today. Thank you so much, my friend. I can't wait to see you again.
Thank you so much, Nate. It's been a pleasure.